Participants use mobile devices now to prevent any interruptions during our event. Please also take a moment now to find the two exits at the front or back of the auditorium that are closest to your seat. In the case of an emergency, proceed to the nearest safe exit in a calm and orderly manner. Public safety or event leaders will provide instructions should this be necessary. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, Gary, look at this crowd.
Wow. Good morning. Good morning. Let's try this again. I still can't hear. Oh, we're going to end this. Good morning. Good morning. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our MATC Asian Affinity Group Invest in Equity event. The Asian Affinity Group's mission is to provide a safe place for employees and students representing all the Asian cultures to connect and support one another.
We are so excited to have you join us here at the downtown Milwaukee campus, MATC, or online via our stream to share our Asian culture and pride today, as well as have a real discussion about issues of equity.
It's important that we gather together during Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month as we celebrate and honor the wide range of cultures and challenges within the Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander communities.
We are beautiful and diverse, and proud to be part of the community here in southeastern Wisconsin. Our plan for today's events include musical performances, the keynote speaker presentation by Dr. Kelvin Yang, and an opportunity for you in the audience to be an active part of the discussion afterwards. So we began with music. To kick off our event today, please welcome Hmong singer and songwriter Lily Vang.
Good morning. It's such a pleasure to be here. Some know me, some don't. I'm Lily Vang. Right now, I am currently a student here at Milwaukee Area Technical College, and I am pursuing the registered nursing program. Just in the Hmong community alone, I've been singing and performing for the past 23 years. Are you guys all from Hapa? Yeah, my son goes to Hapa too. And so this next song that I will be performing is called Pliya. Anybody knows Mavu? She's my best friend. I have had the honor to co-write this song for her, and I hope that in this message, in the music, you can stay persistent, work hard, and in my time of, being the lowest, I've turned to music for comfort because I adore music because I believe that it can teach and preserve our Hmong culture. And so I hope you guys enjoy this song.
Sai cho cái chi yo
chạy tê ư màn thiết cho hơ kê ôi kê chia đây yên đời nó tu ninh trung háo nơi yêu cơ thua có sát đi e plia plia ôi chia tơ lo khía có lâu chia thiên lo bơ hư có luôn chia mỗi trời li có gió game bao số thua có sát đi e plia mơ có gió có luôn du ca. Thank you. Have a great day, and I hope you guys work hard. And I'm gonna be at MATC for a while, so hopefully I see some of you. So, thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much, Lily, for that beautiful performance. Now we would like to welcome President of Milwaukee Area Technical College, Dr. Vicki Martin, to share some opening remarks.
Well, good morning, everyone. All right, I love it. This group is ready to go. It's so great to be here with all of you today during Asian American and Pacific Heritage Month in honor of the many, many contributions and accomplishments of the Asian Americans and the Pacific Americans. I especially want to thank our Asian Affinity group for the work they are doing to build community among members and to foster greater equity and inclusion for Asian American and Pacific Islander students and employees here at MATC. Your work is helping to advance the college's strategic priority of equity and our value of inclusion. I also want to thank and recognize the MATC Asian Student Association. You here? Yeah, for their similar work and advocacy for our students. As a college, we want Asian students and employees to receive the support they need here and to feel fully a part of our college community. Thank you for bringing your voices to the conversation and for organizing today's event. I also want to thank the broader MATC community for your support of the employee and student groups and your participation today. That said, of course, there's always more work to be done. My commitment to advancing equity and inclusion for our AAPI communities and every community we serve here at MATC is steadfast. Please let me know how I can continue to support you and what you're trying to do. You have supporters here at the college to help advance your work, including me, and it's my pleasure to introduce another one of them now. Dr. Eva Martinez-Paulus led the work to bring affinity groups to our college and continues to lead our diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts across the college, as well as developing an action-oriented 5-year DEI plan. Join me in welcoming our Vice President and Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer, Dr. Martinez-Paulus. Thanks, everyone.
Welcome, everyone. How's everyone doing today? Good. I am so excited to be here. Being here in this room today truly reminds me of my journey in higher education. Back in 2006, I started as an admissions counselor at Marquette University. And now I see myself here at MATC, and I reflect on the wonderful contributions that our colleges and universities in the area, particularly MATC, have on the community. So it is a pleasure to welcome you to the MATC community and be here today. I remember going to the different high schools and middle schools as a recruiter and admissions counselor. That probably was like maybe 10 years ago. And I remember the excitement and also all of the wonderful conversations related to typically my first question was always, what do you want to do when you grow up, right? So I am so excited to see each one of you here today, because you being here at the MATC campus is also going to give you the opportunity to continue to think about what is it that you would like to do after high school and beyond. And I know some of us may not have that idea yet, but as we continue throughout the day and you are listening to the stories and our keynote speaker, I hope that you can also begin to dream about what is that journey for you, what is the leadership journey, and what is it that you would like to accomplish when you go off to college. I also do hope that you consider Milwaukee Area Technical College for your studies. I know that we are increasing our dual enrollment opportunities for those of you who are in high school. That could be available to you. But then also after high school, really beginning to think about MATC for being one of your options right in the community. Again, I would like to welcome you to MATC. And also I would like to, from the bottom of my heart, really thank our Asian Employee Affinity Group for putting this wonderful event together. The Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion continues to support wonderful events like today's event to not only share more information about our communities, but also create a sense of belonging at MATC for our students and our employees, and also to be able to engage in community outreach. So thank you so much for being here today. I also would like to give a special shout out to your teachers and counselors who are here with you today. Thank you so much for your dedication in bringing your students over to the MATC campus. We have so many things at MATC, and again, I hope that you consider MATC as your choice as you are thinking about your career in the future. Again, thank you for being here, and I hope that you enjoy the next couple of hours with a lot of really great information. And I will be sitting around. If you have any questions about my role, about what I do at MATC as the Vice President of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, I would love to be able to tell you what I do, because this could also be a potential career for you. Thank you, and have a great program.
Thank you so much, Dr. Martin. Thank you so much, Dr. Martinez-Palas.
Today, we are grateful to welcome Dr. Calvin Yang as our guest speaker. Dr. Calvin Yang received his psychology degree in counseling psychology from the APA-accredited counseling psychology program at St. Mary's University of Minnesota. Dr. Yang received clinical training in community mental health, residential treatment centers, and university counseling settings. Dr. Yang is currently a postdoctoral resident at Crossroads Institute in downtown Los Angeles, where he conducts psychological assessments and provides psychotherapy for a wide range of mental health issues to emerging adults and university students.
In his spare time, Dr. Yang creates and publishes content on social media to teach and educate about the Hmong culture, language, and bicultural experiences as a Hmong American. He acknowledges the intergenerational gaps, incongruences in cultural values, communication difficulties due to varying levels of language proficiency, and familiar conflicts related to differences in race. Therefore, Dr. Yang created Ductum Dose, with hopes to reconnect generations through storytelling, explaining ancient proverbs, and encouraging the community to explore their ethnic and cultural roots. Dr. Yang believes in living life to the fullest, and traveling has afforded him the opportunity to gain new perspectives and outlooks in life. We are honored that he could be here with us today. Please help me welcome Dr. Calvin Yang.
Good morning, everyone. If we could do a quick exercise here to get our energy going, get our body flowing, blood flowing, I'm going to have everybody stand up here. So what I would like you to do is, to the person to your left, turn to that person and say, "You are awesome." Now to the person to your right, turn to that person and say, "You are enough." Now here's the fun part. I believe in the power of posture. You know, when you think of someone who is feeling sad, usually what do you see? You see a person who is hunched over, right? They might have their hands in their face. They don't feel well, and that's your indication that they're not feeling well. So your posture also gives you that power, that energy that we need. And today I'll be talking about the power, about feeling empowered. And so to empower ourselves this morning, what I would like for you to do is, let's get in that superhero position. How does that look like? Someone demonstrate that real quick. There we go. So we got a few. You got your hand up, flying like Superman, Superwoman, right? Wonder Woman. Here's what we're all gonna do. We're gonna stand like wherever you are, and we're gonna place our hands right here in our hip just like that. There you go. And with our shoulders, let's roll it back, put our chin up a little bit, and repeat after me. I am awesome. I am enough. I am amazing. And with the right hand, reach back and give yourself a big pat on your back. There you go. All right, let's have a seat. So today we're going to talk about Asian monolith, empowering to succeed. This word might catch you off guard a little bit, like, what is monolith? What does that even mean? Are we talking about Pokemons here? In fact, we will in a bit here. So when you hear the word Asian, what comes to mind? This is going to be an interactive part, right? What comes to mind for you? Yeah, right there in front seat.
When I hear Asian, I think Hmong people.
Hmong people, okay. All right. Hands back there. Yep. Yes, you, yep. Say that again. Rice. Yes, of course. The staple in every Asian household, right? You got to have rice. One more, and then we'll move on here. Yeah, red shirt, hand up high there. Yep. Yep.
I think about Asia.
Asia, right? Continents where we originated from. So yeah, when we think of Asian, what comes to mind? All these different words here. Now, the next question is, Asians are. Asians are what? Fill in that blank. When you think of Asian, yeah, right there with the mask, yep. Humans, I love it. Right there in the back, yep. Say that again. Diverse, I love it. Perfect word, I love it. One more over here, someone over here. Right there in the front, right there, yep. Yes, you. Smart. So we got diverse, we got smart. Asians are human. Yes, we are. We're all humans. But there's this thing called the model minority myth that somehow moves us away from all those key words that you mentioned. So Asian Americans, the model minority myth suggests that Asian Americans are homogenous. What does homogenous mean? It means that we're kind of the same. There's no difference. It silences the word diverse that we have over here, that we're all the same. It also perpetuates the idea that we're all universally successful. Have you all seen the movie Crazy Rich Asians? Yeah. Oh my gosh, if I had a car like that or a house like that, that'd be amazing if I lived lavishly like that. But is that true? I don't think so. So to say that Asians are all universally successful, it blankets a lot of the efforts that we put into our own success. And it silences the voices of those who are struggling and going through challenging times. Asians are free of barriers, economic, social, educational, political as well. And the Asians don't need help. Look at these Asians. Hey, they're successful. They're doing well. They got mansions, they got sports cars, they got money, they're rich, they're doing well in school. We don't need to help them. It silences a lot of the folks who are struggling, who need the help, who desperately needs the help. And it makes it hard for those who needs the help to speak up. So we're gonna look at some data today. I know data is boring. When I went to school, when it comes to statistics, I dreaded it. It made me tired. I hated it. So here's the part where Pokemon comes in. So the word aggregated, does anybody know what that means? All right, so yes, we got one up here. Yes, what does it mean? Say that again. Irritated? Close. I do get irritated with this. But aggregated itself, it means lumped together, put together. So here's where the Pokemon comes in. Imagine that we're out hunting for a Charizard, right? We're out at the park, we're walking around with our phones, playing Pokemon Go, boof, a Charizard comes out. And one person over here shouts, "Oh, look, it's a Pokemon." What's gonna happen? Huh? Right? A lot of people would be like, sus. Like, are you kidding me? This is a 4,000 CP shiny Charizard. You're gonna call it a Pokemon? You dum-dum, right? You're like, you dum-dum? That's a Charizard, not a Pokemon. So aggregated data is kind of like that, where everything is lumped together. Charizard, Venusaur, Weedle, all these Pokemon lumped together. When you see a Weedle, you're like, oh, that's a Pokemon. It's not even a Pokemon, it's a Pokemon. You see a Charizard, oh, that's a Pokemon. It's a Pokemon, true, but it's not just a Pokemon. It's a Charizard. It's a shining Weedle. It's a shiny Pokemon. It's a high CP Pokemon, right? So aggregated data is kind of like that, where it puts it all together. So how does this aggregated data impact Asians in the United States? Well, it perpetuates the idea, or perpetuates that model minority stereotype that we were just talking about. When we look at this data, when it's all lumped together, it looks really good. It makes Asians seem like we're universally successful, that we don't need any help, that we're doing really well. When in fact, I love the word that was shouted earlier, diverse. We are a very diverse group of people. Over 50 ethnic communities within this Asian category that we're talking about here. So this data, shout out to Cal as well for allowing me to use this information that they collected. Cal is the Coalition of Asian American Leadership in Minnesota. So if we look at the different groups here, this is from Minnesota. We can see that there are varying different groups, different ethnic cultural communities underneath that Asian umbrella. In Minnesota, actually, Hmong people are the highest number, 31%, if we're looking at the Asian race here. And you've got 60% Asian Indian, Chinese, Vietnamese, Korean, Burmese, and so on and so forth. So when we look at aggregated data, the Pokemon label, it looks like we're all the same. But in fact, when we look at the different Pokemons, we're all very different. We come from different ethnic communities. So let's look at some data here to help us understand what's happening here. And why is it that Asians seem to be universally successful? When we look at the data back in 1970 here, well, first of all, let me read this here. Asians in the top 10% of income distribution earn 10 times more than those at the bottom. So this is the part where my son, he's like, I hate word problems. Because when it comes to word problems in school, he struggles with it. He's like, what does that mean, 10 times more? It means you times it by 10. So if we think about the person who's on the bottom here, right, the bottom 10%, if I'm making $1 and I'm at the bottom 10%, 10 times more is what? $10, right? So that is the gap here, is what they're saying. The person who makes very little, $1, and the person who's making a lot is 10 times more. One person is making $1 per hour, one person is making $10 per hour. That is a big gap. The gap is big, but the number is small, right? But when we blow up the number, we'll see the bit. It's a big difference. So we can see here, back in 1970s, Asians were down here compared to the other races here. But as time moved on here, in 2016, that number jumped up, and Asians are way up here, which means that Asians suddenly became extremely successful and wealthy. But that's not necessarily true. If you look at the highest or the average household income for Asians in 2019, it's $85,000. If we look at the highest income, the top level, we're at $127,000. And then the lowest income, is $46,000. Now, this is income per household. Remember, this is income per household, not per person. Why am I making that emphasis that this is income per household? Because when we look at this number here, we're going to look at two different numbers here. We're looking at median household income and per capita income. So median household income is that household income that we just saw, that 85,000 or that 127 or that 46,000. What's important for us to look at is the per capita income. That means per person. How much is a person making? The individual person, one person. How much is one person making in the household? And if we look at that, we can see that that number varies across the board. So I'm from a Hmong community. I am Hmong American. And growing up, my family is a good representation of these numbers here. So I'm going to look at the Hmong category right here. So within the household, average Hmong household makes about $53,000. But per person, it's only about $13,000 that they bring into the household. Why is this information important? Because this is a household income. Just by show of hands, how many of you have your aunts or uncle or someone outside your immediate family living with you? How many of you have grandmas and grandpas living with you? Yeah, a lot of you. So this household income is not just for a set of parents or single parents and a few kids. This is multi-generational families living all together in one household. Now imagine this right here, the Burmese family here, $25,000 per year. And you're supporting a family, a multi-generational family within a household. That is hard to feed, to put food on the table, to pay for bills. So when we look at it and break it down, making $7,000 only, that's not much at all. That's not successful at all. That doesn't fit that model minority myth, the criteria that we saw earlier. If we look at employment here, total population, again, this is Minnesota data, 66% of people in Minnesota are employed. If we look at the Asian population here, 66% are employed, which also matches the total population of Minnesota. And it looks great, doesn't it? But if we break this down, again, the Pokemon metaphor, if we look at the Weedle and we look at Charizard, we can see that these two are very different. So Charizard is probably up here, high number, high CP, and the Weedle is down here, 45%. So when we start breaking down that Pokemon label to look at the different Pokemons and not just the overarching piece, we can see that all these Pokemons are different. Charizard is not the same as Weedle. Weedle is not the same as Venusaur. They're all very different. If we look at education, it's the same thing. And this is perhaps why that stereotype earlier that Asians are universal, not really. We can see that this was back in 2010 to 2016, these two numbers, they vary a little bit, but it's an increase as well. If we look at, compared to all the other races, Asians are doing relatively well. They're working hard, they're getting jobs, they're highly educated, but that's because everything is lumped together. It's aggregated in that Pokemon label we're talking about. Now let's look at education as well. If we break this down, we can see this even closer, even better, even clearer. In the US, over 31% of people have their bachelor's degree. If we look at the Asian American community, that number beats it by over 20%, a high number. A lot of Asian Americans obtaining bachelor's degree or higher. And again, if we just look at the Pokemon label, we only see Pokemon. We don't get to see the Charizard or the Weedle. So let's break that down even more to look at the different types of Pokemon. We can see here, the numbers are very different. If anything, for me, coming from a Hmong community, I look directly for the Hmong community. And where did we land? 4 from the bottom, 17% only. Does that fit that model minority myth that we saw earlier, that we're all highly educated? Doesn't look like it, does it? 17% out of the whole entire population. That's a very small number. So why is this data important? This is part of the reason why you're here today. The data is important because it determines the social determinants of our health. The inaccurate data affects the social determinants of health within our AAPI communities. Social determinants are the health conditions in the environments where people are born, where we live, where we work, where we play, where we worship. And also it affects a wide range of our health, our functioning. It affects the quality of life, outcomes, and risks. So the first thing here we see is economic stability. This data helps us understand this because in the United States here, 1 out of 10 people, that's what, 10%, right, of people live in poverty. And many people can't afford even basic needs, basic things, food, shelter, healthcare, housing, all of these things. People with steady employment, they're less likely to live in poverty, and they're more likely to be healthy. But many people have trouble finding and keeping jobs. It's really difficult for folks when they're seen as they don't need help. People with disabilities, injuries, or health conditions, they're more especially likely to not have jobs, experiencing more challenges getting jobs. In addition, many people with steady work, they still don't earn enough to support the family. Like in the data we saw earlier, the Burmese family, or folks who just recently came to the United States, immigrated here, not being able to obtain employment to support the family. And if we look at education as well, children from low-income families, children with disability, children who will routinely experience different forms of discrimination, bullying at school, it still happens nowadays. They're more likely to struggle with different subjects like math and reading. They're also less likely to graduate from high school. I know some of you here are in high school right now. Or they might even go to college. Might not even have the resources or the motivation to attend a college like this here at METC. This means that these folks are also less likely to get safe, high-paying jobs, and they're more likely to have health problems. And so this data is important to help us allocate resources to the right places to support our communities. Now, if we look at the healthcare social determinants, we see that about 1 in 10 people in the United States, they don't have health insurance. And that's important for you to go see a doctor here. You're paying out of pocket, it's a lot of money. So people without insurance, they're less likely to have a primary care doctor. When they hear the question, who's your PCP or your primary care, they have no clue because they don't even have a doctor. So we got to allocate money to increase the insurance coverage rates, find ways to strategize, to find ways to support these communities that desperately need to support the resources for healthcare. And then neighboring as well, our neighborhoods and build good environments for our neighborhoods. Many people in the United States, we live in neighborhoods with high rates of violence, unsafe air. I came from California to be here today. In California, we have smog, and it's pretty bad in Los Angeles. And then places like in the Michigan area, Flint, Michigan, we saw in the news, unsafe water that you can't even use. Many other health and safety risks. And so racial, ethnic minorities and people with low income are more likely to live in places like this. And so we need to use this data to help us support the different communities, especially the Asian AAPI communities who are struggling at this time. And then we also have the social and community context as well. So many people, they face challenges and dangers that they can't control, like unsafe neighborhoods, discrimination, or trouble just affording things that they need, like we mentioned earlier, the basic needs, just food and water, a warm bed, a pillow, a place to sleep in. So this data here helps us to talk to people who are in positions of power to support and provide resources to our AAPI community to help us. Because if the Asian monolith that we're talking about here, the mono-minority myth continues to be perpetuated, then we're seen as one Pokemon only. We're not seeing the Charizard, we're not seeing the Weedle, we're not seeing all these different Pokemons. And there's not the resources that we need that's available to us. So, you're probably wondering, what does this data have to do with us? And how is it relevant to us? I'm gonna skip through these right here. It's important because people of color, we often face prejudice and bias. And this contributes to a sense of invisibility. How many of you sometimes go to school and you feel invisible? Yeah, I appreciate your bravery. I admire your courage in raising your hand. It feels really lonely, doesn't it? It's almost like you go to school, you feel like a ghost. I've had that experience growing up. Walking around, even though I'm at school, I feel like no one sees me. I feel alone, helpless in some ways. So it's important for us because of this invisibility piece. Even when others don't directly put you down, or if we're talking about the minority myth, there are different assumptions and harmful stereotypes that can produce feelings of being less than, being inferior, feeling insignificance wherever you go. So here's some common scenarios that maybe could help you, actually some scenarios that leave you feeling ignored or maybe feeling overlooked when you're at school, in the community, different places here. Maybe some people might suggest that your racial identity, it means that you follow certain practices and certain customs. That maybe you are less intelligent in some ways, or have one particular skill set. So for me, growing up, a lot of people ask me, you must be good at math. How many of you get that question? Yeah, a few of you, yeah. And I often get this question, are you good at Kung Fu? Anybody? So I wasn't good at math, but I was decent at Kung Fu. And I still argue with my sister. Shout out to my sister for being better than me. She's really good at Kung Fu, and she's my motivation to be better. But these stereotypes, they don't fit us. But if the assumption is that that's who you are, and we don't plug in the piece of diverse, the question you started, or the statement we heard earlier about being diverse, then it seems like we're all the same, and that's not necessarily true. People expect you to behave in a certain way because of your ethnicity or cultural identity, or people erase your cultural identity and sense of self by refusing to acknowledge it, by saying, I don't see color. I used to fall in that category too, but as I learn more about myself, I start to see my color. It is the difference that makes us beautiful, the different colors of our communities. We all bring a lot to the table, and it is our cultural identity that makes us a collective community. And so I do see color. The color allows me to understand myself and my peers around me as well. When I went to the University of Minnesota, something happened, and even to this day, it still haunts me at times. So when I was in high school, I was accepted into a program called the Multicultural Excellence Program at Harding High School in St. Paul. So to get into this program, you had to have a GPA, maintain GPA of 3.5 or higher. And then also, you have to do community work and different acts of services. You had to maintain that in order to stay in the program. And so once you're in the program, if you maintain those criteria, then you are afforded a scholarship. It wasn't just any scholarship. It was a full ride. 4 years of college paid, all your books, tuition, everything paid. And on orientation day, the day that we went to school for orientation, I remember we went there and we had orientation and we were talking about school, just talking about how you're gonna get yourself acclimated into the college setting. And then we had a discussion about who got accepted, where people are going, whether you're going to the biological services or you're going into liberal arts. And we're talking about admission. And then somehow the conversation got to the scholarship piece about the folks who got a full ride to the University of Minnesota. And I remember some of my peers there, well, I shouldn't say my peers, they were more against me in some ways. They had mentioned, there's no way that you got a full ride. How did you get a full ride? You only got it because you were what, do you think? Yeah, you probably guessed it right. You got it because you were Asian. Of course you got it. And that statement still haunts me till this day, because that erases the hard effort, the blood, sweat, and tear that I put into obtaining that scholarship, the years of hard work behind it. It's almost as if I worked so hard and it was neglected, basically wiped out and erased. And it made me feel really, really small, when in fact I was supposed to feel good about it. So the imposter syndrome starts to kick in. You probably don't know what that is yet, but later on we'll have a conversation about that, especially the HAPA kids. We might talk about that tomorrow. The imposter syndrome starts to kick in. So what is the impact of invisibility? Well, invisibility can have an impact on us in many ways, one of which is our mental health. Drawing from my previous experience, when we start losing confidence in our abilities, we begin to do what? We begin to isolate. When we don't feel confident in ourselves anymore, we tend to move away from people, move away from things, move away from groups and gatherings like this. We tend to want to be by ourselves. We might even start noticing ourselves feeling anxious around other people. You meet someone, you don't feel confident about yourself, you become more self-conscious. I don't want them thinking that I'm really only good at math, when in fact I'm really good at other things. Something that I noticed here as I'm talking here is, I remember when I was in school, and they would ask, does anybody know anything about computers? We're having some technical issues. I suddenly noticed I had this urge of wanting to step into that role, or that I felt obligated to step into that role. Even though I had no clue about what I was doing, I pretended that I knew, and that was that pressure. The ironic thing about this is that mental health conditions, they're often described as invisible illnesses. And this invisibility that we're feeling here, ironically, aligns with what we're talking about here. It's some of the mental health concerns that we have. So your peers at school, family, friends, and those around you, they might not even realize that what they're doing is they're hurting you in some ways. If anything, it makes it worse because they'll say things like, oh, you shouldn't feel like that. Why are you feeling like that? You just need to try harder. Has anybody heard that before? You just need to try harder? Yeah. You're not doing it right. You just got to work hard. You're not reading enough. You're not trying hard enough. Oh, you think that is bad? Let me tell you about my story. And that just erases all the struggles that you've had. So then you start to blame yourself for your own distress that you're experiencing. It's because maybe I didn't listen, or maybe because I'm just not good at this. Maybe I'm just not cut out to go to school. Maybe I'm just not good at math overall. And we start to internalize these thoughts and these feelings, and it makes it worse and it has an impact on us. So regularly feeling overlooked or rejected, it can really affect our emotional health. It creates a lot of emotional distress. It makes us feel a lot of anger. We might be angry at the world. We might start getting angry at our friends and our family, maybe even at our school. Why does the school have to be like this? I hate school. When in fact, deep down inside, you love school. But all these different experiences lead you to a place where you start to become angry. You might even start envying your peers. How come these folks over here, they don't have a single worry in school? It seems like they're always so confident. They're always jumping for joy. They're always engaging in conversations. But I'm over here struggling to assert myself in some ways. And then maybe that sense of shame might even set in too. Shame because I know for me, I speak from experience, being a first-generation college student, there was a lot of pressure on me to succeed. And when I found myself not doing well in school, when I got a C in chemistry class, I felt that sense of shame kick in right away. I brought dishonor to my family. They're looking forward to me paving the way, and here I am, getting C's, sometimes even failing. I failed a few courses. Not proud of it, but also the failures I've experienced taught me who I am today. It gave me that extra layer of skin. So we may have that sense of shame, and ultimately, it might even turn to sadness. You start feeling hopeless, helpless, and a lot of sense of disappointment in yourself. It may also affect your attitude towards your peers too. Affects your relationship. It makes it more difficult to connect with other people. And the less connected you are with other people, the more invisible you begin to feel. The less connected you are with your peers, with your teacher, with your school. And when you feel ignored over and over again, you might begin to consider yourself lesser than others. You might even feel a sense of unworthiness as well. And the thoughts and belief, they can reduce your sense of worth. You might stop seeking the connections that you so desperately desire, that you want to connect with your peers, build relationships, connect with your teacher. Suddenly, you just don't feel like you want to be around anybody. So feeling lonely, isolated, or detached from the world, yeah, that can be factored into depression. And it can affect us in developing other mental health conditions too. So that is why it is important. Now here's the part that I want you to take away from today's presentation here is, how do you show up? I don't care how you show up. You can make some noise. In fact, let's make some noise right now. Whatever you want to shout out, go ahead and shout out. Clap, anything. Hop out, whatever that is. You got to make some noise. There we go. I don't care if you got to scream, if you got to jump out of your seat, you got to clap, whatever that is. If you go to sleep, snore. It doesn't even matter, right? Make some noise. We got to make some noise because that is important. Anything to communicate that you are here and that you are actively participating in these conversations. So the first thing I want you to take away is assertive communication, being able to speak up. Speaking up and stating your thoughts and your feelings. This allows you to advocate for your personal needs. This also reminds other people in the room, in your discussions that you engage in, that your voice also matters. This type of communication can help in any situation. It could be here at school. It could be out in public. It may happen at home too, but I know that in the Asian cultures, you don't speak back to your parents, right? So don't go talking to your mom and your dad and disobeying them and saying, hey, Dr. Calvin told us to come do this. I'm going to get in trouble. So don't do that. But assert yourself in different places. Share your thoughts and your feelings. When the teacher says, what do you think about this? Raise your hand confidently and speak up and talk and share because your voice matters. If someone overlooks you in the efforts you put in or overlooked you unintentionally, they might be more careful going forward as well because now they notice that you are there. They notice that you're actively listening and paying attention. And they know that you aren't willing to be ignored, that you're showing up as well. And the more firmly you establish your opinions and needs, the more difficult it becomes for other people to ignore you or ignore those around you as well. Another piece that I want to highlight here is increasing your emotional awareness. I think for me, this is something that I struggled with growing up as a Hmong boy. I was taught culturally to be stoic in some ways, to not show my emotions, to not show my sadness, to not cry. You're weak if you cry. So my emotions were suppressed in many ways. And it was difficult for me to understand what was brewing up inside of me. Sometimes I would sit in class and I would have something that I want to say. I noticed that as they're talking, something's brewing up in me. My heart is racing, my blood is boiling, my hands start to sweat, and I want to say something, but somehow I can't spit it out. And it's my emotions that started to kick in because I see and I hear something that makes me want to say something, but I don't know what's even happening. I'm not even sure what the heart racing means. The knot that's turning in my stomach, what does that even mean? What is my body telling me? What are these emotions and feelings telling me? So emotional awareness is important. Yeah, it's difficult. There's hardship and difficulty in expressing emotions, but it can teach a lot of people how to read facial expressions, how to read the room as well. This is not just for only yourself, understanding who you are and how you show up, but also paying attention to what's happening in the room. People might hesitate to approach you when they don't know how you're showing up or if you'd welcome their company. When you're much more aware of yourself and you can express yourself, people get to see a different part of you. You're not just this stoic robot anymore. I think earlier someone said, you're human. We're human. So as humans, we also have emotions and feelings that we are more certainly available and also welcome to express and to show ourselves. If you come to me and start talking to me and I'm just like this the whole time, are you going to want to approach me? Yeah, okay. Probably not, right? Because you're not sure how to engage that person. You're not sure if that person is going to be welcoming you with open arms or if that person is just, I'm a stone wall today, don't talk to me. But if we are much more aware of our emotions, then we can also express it. Not only can we express it, but we can also detect that in the room. We read the room as well. So emotional repression, as we're talking about earlier, being taught to suppress our emotions, can affect our health in many ways. It never hurts to spend some time exploring your own feelings and getting more comfortable with sharing them too. Saying things like, I'm feeling sad today. I know that's hard for a lot of us to say because it takes an extreme amount of vulnerability to say, I'm feeling sad. You know what's even harder to say is when you're upset or you're angry or you disagree, especially in class. When maybe one of your peers might say something and you're like, no, that doesn't sound right. I know that's hard to say, I disagree. I respectfully disagree because it takes a lot of vulnerability to say that. Or maybe something your teacher said that offended you in some ways. It's hard to say, because the difference in power, right? Your teacher is in the position of power, you're a student, so there is a difference of power. It's hard to say, I disagree with what you said. Or maybe sometimes you may feel left out because of a reference that you don't understand. What does that mean? Let me share with you. When I was in school, let me give you a little bit of background. I grew up in a household that watches movies like Wong Fei-hung, City Hunter, Jackie Chan. Those are the movies I was used to watching. right? V3, does anybody know what V3 is? I'm dating myself. Gongqi, anybody? Dang, I'm old. That's what my kids tell me. You got to deactivate your TikTok, Dad. Go back to Facebook. That's where old people are. So growing up, I watched these movies, and that's all I watched every single day. But when I would go to school and my teachers would reference things that I've never seen before. You know, I remember one time, one of them was referencing a show back in MASH or something. And everyone's kind of like, yeah, sure. And I'm over here like, I am lost. I feel really invisible right now. Or they may say something that is different or something that offends you. It's hard to lean into that space and say, you know what? I'm sorry about what you said to me. Well, actually, let's take that sorry part out. I'm not going to apologize, but I would say, what you said really offended me. To say something like that and to be assertive and communicate that is hard. And it takes a lot of vulnerability and courage to do it. But that in and of itself can also set the room in a space where you can create that space. You co-create a safe space for all of you to show up. And that we also know each other, that we know each other not just as a human, but we know our emotions, how we affect one another. What I say can affect you, what you say affect me. We can demonstrate respect for one another. Not only that, but we create space to learn about each other. Space for us to make mistakes with one another and feel safe doing that. So we can learn more about who we are as people and build a community together at school or outside of school. So we're here with the power to empower. Earlier we did the superhero stance. We want to find ways to empower ourselves and those around us. Some things that we can do to empower ourselves is take on leadership roles. I think we saw in the minority myth earlier that Asians are universally successful, but we don't see a whole lot of Asians in leadership roles. If anything, for me, I was very happy to see Andrew Yang during the presidential run, and he was on stage talking. But even that, if you pay close attention to that, you would have seen that Andrew Yang was on stage, but he felt invisible in some ways too. Silenced in some ways. It almost seems like what he had to say didn't mean much at all. So free of barriers, like we saw earlier with the Asian minority myth, when the word political came up, that's what came up for me. I felt proud to see that, but somehow he wasn't even in the conversation, silenced in some ways. So I encourage all of you to take on some leadership roles within your school. Here at MATC, HAPA, or other places, at work, it doesn't matter what it is. Taking on that role, taking on that seat. There's a saying in Hmong that I really love, and I learned this from my dad. The saying is, it's a very powerful saying if you understand what it means. It means take a seat at their table and speak their language. When you sit at that seat, number one, you've made it. Your efforts have paid off. Number two now is you speak the language. Not only do you speak the language, but you also get to voice your opinions and what matters to you and your community. We've seen this happen a lot now. We're seeing a lot of people and politicians stepping up. A lot of representatives are stepping into that role, changing things up, because there are communities like we saw earlier who are not at the top 10%, who are at that 10% who are struggling. But when you're at the seat and you can speak that language, you can also advocate for the respective communities who are struggling. Become the role model that you want as well, or the role model that you had, or the role model that you want to see. I know growing up, I didn't have a whole lot of role models. As I mentioned with regards to academics, my parents didn't go to school. They're refugees. They escaped the genocide during the Secret War. They're the reason why I'm here today. But they didn't go to college. When I asked my dad, this is a true story, okay? When I asked my dad, I was in third grade. And in third grade, Lane Elementary in California, we had, it was a student council, that's what it was. And we were running for positions. And I wanted to be the vice president. And I asked my dad, I said, Dad, how do I write my speech? I don't know what to say. When I run for this, they're going to ask me to say a few words about why I wanted to be the vice president and what do I envision happening within the school. And my dad helped me write the script. And when my dad and I were done with it, I looked at the script. My dad had helped me write a letter to the principal. And it wasn't anything about a speech addressing the student body. He had no idea what student council was. He had no idea what I was even doing. He couldn't help me at that point. But even though he couldn't help me, what was important for me was he tried. He tried and he helped me the best that he could. And if anything that we can take away from that story is that I hope that you would try to lean into those leadership positions. Even if you may not know what you're doing, if your heart tells you, your passion is telling you to do it, try it out. Be open to these opportunities and become the role model that you want to see and the role models that other people may want to see. Look for mentorship. Look for people who have already done it. If you want to become, let's say, an engineer, talk to someone who's been through that. Ask them about the struggles and challenges that they experience. Learn from their experience and use that to help guide you along the way. Educate yourself and others about the AAPI communities. I think this is a very important one. And I think these conversations happen a lot in classroom settings and outside in the public as well. When people are talking about the different communities, when people, something I get all the time, people would say, "Are you Chinese?" growing up. Everywhere I go, "Are you Chinese?" When I was 4 years old. Nope. "Are you Chinese?" When I was 8 years old. Nope. When I went to high school, "Are you Chinese?" Yep. I eventually gave in. But I found out that didn't help me or the different communities. It's important for us to not just educate ourselves about our own respective ethnic community and heritage, but for us to educate those around us as well. When people ask me now, "Are you Chinese?" I would tell them, "No, I'm Hmong." And then they would say, "Hmong? What's that?" I would say, "It's not what's that. Who are you? Who are the Hmong people?" Now I have the privilege to say Hmong people like Suni Lee, because she's done it. She put her hard work and effort into it. People will now say, "Oh, Suni Lee, the gymnast?" Yes, she's Hmong as well. And she represents a big, large community here in the United States. And then people will ask me, "So tell me about Hmong people and the culture." Don't ask me that question. We will talk for hours because I love talking about the Hmong culture. I love talking about who we are as Hmong people. But that's what we got to do. Educate ourselves and then educate others around us. And the most importantly is embrace your identities. I think this is really important for all of us to understand what that means, because we all have different identities. Earlier, you heard me say, I said earlier that I'm a Hmong American. That means that for me, I am Hmong by blood. Nationally, I am also an American as well. That's another part of me. I am also a son. All these different identities that make up who I am. And for you to embrace all these parts, not leave anyone out, but embrace them wholeheartedly, because that's what's going to make you whole. That's what's going to give you that confidence to share about who you are as a person. You're all not here by design. You especially are not here because you needed to make diversity quota. You're here because of your dreams, and you are here because of your sacrifices, the blood, sweat, and tears that I talked about earlier. The hard work that no one gets to see or no one gets to experience but you. It is a personal experience. Even when I was in college, I'm sure a lot of you can relate to this, while trying to juggle exams and papers, I still had to take my parents to their doctor's appointment and translate for them. I still had to drive back home and read their mail to make sure that their bills were paid on time. Because they didn't speak English, they didn't come here with not much at all. And it's a lot of work that no one gets to see. If anything, no one gets to see until graduation day. When they get the invitation, they show up and they see you smiling as you walk across the stage and you're handing your diploma. That's all they get to see. What they don't see is the hard work leading up to that. So I encourage you to embrace that process. It's hard, but trust me, it builds character. It builds you for the next chapter of your life. So you're not here by mistake. You're here to build your life and your future. And during your academic journey, my hope is that you're also extending a hand and helping pull others along the way. You know, there's a saying that goes like this, that it takes a village to raise our children, right? For us to raise our communities and to share our heritage with other people. We got to do this together. Individually, it may be difficult, but by numbers, we are strong. And I hope that all of you take a moment to share this with your friends as you leave this place. Because you're all important, your voice matters. You matter. We're diverse in numbers. Collectively, we're also an amazing group of people that is smart, like we heard. We're diverse, and we're humans. And with that, happy Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Take care and be well.
Thank you, Dr. Yang, for an insightful presentation. Let's give him another round of applause. We now have time to welcome questions from the audience present here at MATC. If you have a question directly for Dr. Yang, please proceed to the microphone in front of the auditorium to ask your question.
Don't be shy. Nobody? Somebody's got to have a question.
Oh,
Go ahead, go
yep.
up.
Come on up. Yeah. Oh, there we go. Yeah, let's give these young gentlemen a hand of applause for stepping up.
Why is he a doctor?
Oh, so the question is why is Dr. Yang a doctor?
Yeah.
Okay, we will ask him that question. He'll be right back.
Do I ask that?
You will wait for just a moment. We'll have Dr. Yang answer your question, but you can just have a seat.
Sorry about that. Let's get that question back up here again. Okay.
Sean. Why did you become a doctor?
Oh! If you're Asian like me, there are three choices to choose from, right? Number one is you're an engineer, 2, you're a lawyer, or 3, you're a doctor. So, I'm joking. Anyways, my parents did push me to become a doctor. They actually pushed me to become a medical doctor. And as I went to school and I started taking psychology or chemistry classes and biology classes, I realized that I liked it, but I didn't do too well in it. I was getting B's, B pluses, some A's here and there, but I took a psychology course in undergrad and I really enjoyed it. And the reason why I enjoyed the psychology course is because it taught me a lot about these emotions I was talking about earlier that I never had language for. When I took that class, it gave me a sense of power, like I can actually speak to what I'm experiencing. Not only that, but I realized I'm sure I'm not the only person who's going through this. I'm sure a lot of people are struggling with this too. So I kept taking more psychology courses, and the more I took psychology courses, the more my parents started to get more anxious, and then eventually I decided, you know what, that's not the route I want to go to. Medicine is great, but it's not for me. Psychology is for me, so then I went to psychology, took the courses, got the degree, and then I wanted to do more. And here's the reason why I want to do more. You want to keep opening doors in your life. You don't want to open one door, shut and be done. You want to have a set of keys. Yesterday I talked about a set of keys. I know it's a long answer, okay? But I think this is going to be important for all of you to hear. When I was younger, I asked my dad a simple question. I said, hey, Dad, when you die, can I have your set of keys? And I was 4 years old. because I was fascinated by how my dad can bring this set of keys and open every single door at home. Not only that, he had the key to his car. Everywhere we went, even at church, hundreds of doors, he was able to open every single doors, and I was fascinated by that. And I thought to myself, if only one day I can have those keys as well. So I asked my dad, Dad, when you die, can I have those keys? I realized that I don't need the physical key. That's not the key to life. The key to life is, earlier I mentioned, being open to opportunities, being willing to invest in yourself by getting into those nitty-gritty, and that is, when an opportunity presents, take it. Take that opportunity because you never know where it's gonna go. And these opportunities right here, metaphorically, are the keys to opening doors. And so why did I become a doctor? I wanted to get to the highest level where I've attained all the keys to open all the doors that I need. So that whoever I come across to help, I don't have any restrictions because I have what I need, the tools and the keys I need to help everyone that I come in contact with. So thank you for asking. Long answer though, but hope that helps.
What makes you moan?
That's a good question. What makes me Hmong? I share with you that I really enjoy my culture. I think Hmong, there's so many parts to it, but for me, two things that I learned about myself along the way is that Hmong is my language. The first reason why, or the first piece here, the reason why language makes me Hmong is because in my language itself teaches me about number two, which is my culture. The reason why I started Dictum Dos is because as I gotten older, I start to realize that a lot of the things that my parents say to me references a lot of things that I didn't know about my own culture. The proverbs that I share on Facebook, on social media, it speaks to a lot of the history, our ancient history, our history. If you listen to the words, it tells you about where Hmong people originated from. So here's one example. Bang Lu that my dad shared with me, a Hmong proverb. It goes, until we see the Yellow River, our hearts are unsettled. If you take that at face value, you'll probably just think, oh, it's a Yellow River, nothing to it. But if you take the time to understand what it's really saying, these are words spoken by a Hmong king. This was during the time where Hmong people and Chinese people were at war too. And Hmong people had civilization by the Yellow River. After the war, Hmong people had to move out. And the Hmong king says, until we see the Yellow River again, until we come back, our hearts are unsettled. And when I learned about that, I'm like, wow, that's so amazing. To me, I thought it was just words being spoken. But I realized it meant more than just that. My language itself represents me as a Hmong person. Embedded in the language are history that I didn't know about. So those are the main things that make me Hmong. Thank you for asking.
I actually have two questions for you.
Sure.
Do you have a clinical practice?
Yes,
currently?
Yeah,
And
Los Angeles.
I heard, from yesterday, you said you lived in Los Angeles. How's the work out there with your clinical practice?
Thank you for asking. Yeah, so I actually don't live in Los Angeles. I live slightly out of Los Angeles, but I practice there. I love the work because in Los Angeles and Southern California, if you've never been there before, it's very diverse. And so there I get to work with people from all different backgrounds. I get to learn about different ethnicity, different cultures, different heritage. And so I really enjoy the place because then I don't understand more. It's not just us going through this struggle that we're experiencing, but different communities also go through the same struggles too. And this, again, is that opportunity piece that I was talking about where when I work more with different ethnic groups, different communities, I'm also collecting these keys to help me so that later on when I move to different places, let's say one day I move back to Minnesota, or if I move to the East Coast or somewhere else, or even outside this country, I have the keys and tools I need to help people.
Do you believe that being Asian made you, tying in being Asian with psychology, did you have a different view of psychology with it? And
yeah.
If that makes sense?
Absolutely, yeah. I think for me, being Asian, growing up within my household and my community, mental health was not really talked about. If anything, whenever we talked about mental health, it was always silenced and quiet. Nobody wanted to talk about it. If we think about psychology, at least I can speak from my experience in the Hmong community, there really isn't a word for mental health. We're still trying to struggle, we're struggling trying to find the right word to describe what mental health is. If anything, for me growing up, the word I heard a lot to describe mental health was the V word, which is what? What do you think? Some of you might be a little young for the word, but the word is vu. Okay, we got some O's here. So I hear that all the time growing up, I keep hearing the word, it means that you are quote unquote crazy. So going into psychology, I wasn't sure. Is this something I should lean into? Is this something I should practice? Because I also noticed that there's a strong stigma that I carry with me, either intentionally or unintentionally, because of my upbringing, my experiences. So going into this to psychology, yeah, it was interesting. But I've also learned a lot about myself. And along the way, I got to educate a lot of people too, to understand more about what mental health really is, to normalize and to destigmatize mental health so that we can give help and provide help to the people who desperately need it. I always think kind of like this too, growing up, that no one needs help, and we're all good. It's just a phase, until I started working with people in the field of psychology, that I realized this is something serious, that we have to give it the attention that it deserves. So going into it was difficult, but I'm glad I made that choice, because now I learned a lot about myself and those around me and what mental health really is.
What's your biggest fear and why?
I think I have a lot of fears. That's a great question. I think one of my biggest fear for me, I grew up in a Christian household, and I'm a Christian. And for me, my fear is that I might not be the person to glorify the Almighty, glorify my God. And that can come in many different forms. That is showing love and compassion for the people that I'm surrounded with. That is doing things to uphold my values. And it's hard to do that for me sometimes because of the social pressure, the cultural pressure, societal pressure that we talked about earlier, many things that factor into affecting me being that person. So my biggest fear is I might not be the person that I want to be. But does that mean that I don't strive for it? Of course not. The last thing we can do is to try. Whatever it is that your own fear, think about that for you too. Try, not just sit back and do nothing. Last night I shared a quote that I think it's important for you all to hear too, and that is, you want to aim high. At least if you aim high and you miss, that's okay. But if you aim low and you hit, that is not okay. So my fear is I might not be the person that I want to be, but that doesn't stop me from trying. Trying to be the best person that I can, to also empower others to do the same thing, to be authentic, to be yourselves, to not be anything less, because you deserve to be you. You deserve to show up authentically as you. Nothing more, nothing less. Thanks for asking.
What was the most difficult part about pursuing a career in psychology?
The first thing that comes to mind with that question is convincing my parents. And I say that because explaining to my parents why I chose psychology instead of medicine, I had no words to describe what psychology is. So that was really difficult. I think the second part in pursuing all of this is being a first generation college student, I had no idea what the heck I was doing. I really didn't have any mentors. I didn't have someone that I can turn to and just say, hey, can you help me write this essay for admission? Or hey, how much is it going to cost? Or if I'm struggling while I'm in the program, hey, where do I find the resources and support? I didn't have a whole lot of people to turn to. So I think that was probably the most challenging part, is feeling like I was going through it alone. Even though I had family, I had my spouse to support me, but they can only help me so far because they weren't in the program. There are nuances to these different programs that not a lot of people understand it unless you are in it and you've been through it. So I didn't have that support. I think that for me was the most challenging part of the whole entire process. But I'm glad that I did do something, and that's why earlier I said is practice assertive communication. And last night I had people point to the air and say, ask questions. That is your key to moving forward, is asking questions. You know, I look at this room and I'm like, if only I could be a kid again. Here's the reason why. When you're a kid and you're young like this, at least I know my kids, you like to ask questions. My kids love to ask questions. Dad, are we there yet? When we drive. Dad, how many more minutes? Dad, can I have Robux? All these questions that come up. And I really love that about kids. But as adults, as we get older, we start to become more rigid. We start to become fearful of asking stupid questions or the wrong questions. So we don't ask questions anymore, and then we become stagnant, and we become stale in some ways. But continue to ask questions. As you ask questions, it'll start opening doors. It'll start making those questions that you have become clearer at the same time. So continue to ask questions.
This is not a personal question, but how do you think Asian American media kind of warps the idea of Asian Americans as a whole?
Yeah, I think, let's go back to what we talked about earlier about Crazy Rich Asian. I think that's a great movie. I loved it. I enjoyed it. It's something that I would hope that all of you will be able to obtain that level of success. But that in of itself is only a part of who we are as Asian Americans. And if the media only portrays that, then we don't get to see the wholesomeness of who we are as Asians, the different collective heritage that we have. So the media points out these great things. They put out the lavish, the amazing, glamorous parts about us. But I also think there's many other parts about ourselves that the media can do a better job at. That is maybe like news anchor. I'm so glad Gia Vang is a news anchor, because I think representation really matters. Growing up, I didn't see that. And I think the media hasn't done a great job of it, but they're starting to do that. I'm seeing that we have more representation. Because when that representation is there, and us as kids, us as the community, when we see that, we also might start thinking, gosh, I want to do that. I want to be just like Gia Vang. I want to be just like Suni Lee, right? Or Dua. He's an actor in Mulan. I want to be an actor too. I want to be on TV. Or we see people on TV, different professions, doctor, lawyer, engineer, talking about different struggles that we're experiencing in society, finding ways to help our society grow. When you see that, you're empowered. When you see that, you're curious. So the media hasn't done a great job representing the Asian communities. And here's the part where I encourage all of you to lean into that space. Take on those roles. 你要落好重，还落好 low is what that saying is. If you don't see it, and you want to see more of it, lean into it and do it. Like Gandhi, right? Be the change you want to see. You want to see something change, and if it's not happening, step into that role. If the media's not doing it, step into that role. Make that change, be the change that you hope to see.
What was the hardest thing you had to deal with growing up?
So many things. I think growing up, one of the things that I struggle with the most, or the hardest thing, is asking my parents for stuff. My parents, again, I mentioned that they're refugees. They came to the United States in the mid-'70s from the refugee camps in Thailand. They didn't have much at all. They came to this country with the clothes in their backs. They didn't speak a single word of English. They weren't educated. They didn't know how to navigate this new society that they suddenly are living in. And so they couldn't really do a whole lot for me. They didn't have a whole lot of money. But when I went to school and I saw the fun things that kids have at school, all the latest gadgets, Trapper Keeper, does anybody know what that is here? I'm dating myself again. Tamagotchi, all these things. See, you've got a few hands, all right? Or let's just say, translating that into 2023, Pokemon cards or, iPads. I wanted that stuff, but I couldn't have it. So things for me, the hardest part about growing up was wanting something but not having it, which is okay. Let's not say, I'm not here to say that that wasn't okay. I'm saying that's what was hard for me because I noticed a lot of kids have it. But that taught me something else. I didn't realize that at the time as a kid. I was just this kid pouting, why can't I have it? Just always upset. How come they have it? How come I don't have it? But as I've gotten older, I realized that taught me a lesson. That taught me to be curious. That taught me motivation. That taught me about wanting something and working hard to obtain it. If I can't have it and I want it, what can I do? Now I start asking questions again, back to that part. So it's hard for me in the beginning, I didn't know what it was. But over time, I realized it was teaching me a lesson. And that's what got me here today, is asking questions. When I see something that I want, work hard for it. There's also a Hmong proverb that I'll share here too, that is, the good fruits are way up high. Money is never in your way. If you want the good fruit, you don't want the low-hanging fruit, you gotta work hard, climb that tree. If you want to be wealthy and make money, you can't just sit at home, play video games all day, and expect money to show up in your bank. No, you gotta go out, you gotta work. So you gotta work hard for what it is that you believe in, work hard for what it is that you want to obtain or achieve. Work hard.
What makes you the most proud of being an Asian American?
I'm proud that I'm Hmong. And as an Asian American, I'm proud of that as well. I'm proud that I'm Hmong American, because these cultures is what makes me who I am. It's the diversity that I bring to the room, the different thoughts and opinions that I bring to the room. It's the culture and the values that I have that I bring to the room that helps make everything more diverse. I love the differences that we have as a community overall. And the reason why I'm proud to be Asian and Hmong American is when we have potlucks, I bring the best food. I bring egg rolls, stuffed chicken wings. If I could bring pho, I would bring pho. I bring fried rice. But I love that about our culture. I love that about being Hmong American. It's the food, the heritage, the culture, and the best part is I get to share that with everyone else. So that's what I'm proud of.
Where do you see yourself 10 years from now?
That's pretty far. I'm 38 right now. I'll be 48 at that time. I think 10 years from now, it's hard to think about myself. If I answer this question, I think I would feel more comfortable answering it the way I'm seeing it. And 10 years from now, what I envision is what it is that we talked about earlier. I envision all of you leaning into these leadership roles, taking on leadership positions, pursuing the dreams and goals that you have. When I flip on the TV when I'm 48 years old, I hope to see some of your faces on TV. When I read the newspaper and I'm old and I just want to drink coffee and read the newspaper, I want to see your faces on the newspaper. I want to read, this person found the cure for cancer. This person fought for justice. This person uplifted a group of community. This person sponsored a group of community. This person did this person did that. I want to see that representation. I want to go into classes and hear you talking, sharing your thoughts and opinions. I envision that all of you won't sit in class quietly like I did growing up, but that in class discussions, your voices are heard, that you share your thoughts and your opinions because they all matter. And I hope that I've done a part of that along the way. And I hope to be able to do this too in some ways, to talk in front of people like this, in front of all of you and other groups of people, to encourage, to motivate, to empower, because you matter. And in 10 years, I want to see you on TV. I will see you on TV. I will see you on the news. I will see you in the newspaper. I will be seeing you standing up here talking while I sit in the audience like today. So that's what I envision.
So I have 2 questions. Other than working in psychology and being able to understand your own feelings, what traits do you already have that made you feel like you were able to become a psychologist?
My mom always said that I'm a person who has an old soul. I think it didn't matter what gathering we had, whether it was a family gathering, it was at school, any kind of gathering. She always said that, where I'm able to conversate with people, talk to people, be empathetic towards people, understanding of people. And I think I didn't really believe that as a kid. I just wanted to be a kid when I was younger. I just wanted to play my cousins and do all that. But at the same time, she also said that she notices that there were moments where I sat with the older folks and have a conversation with them and be understanding, where I sat with my peers and also talk with them in a different way that she saw. I didn't believe it, but as I got older, I realized this is a trait that whether I want to run away from it or not, and this is the part where I was saying, embrace your identities, embrace yourself. When you take on these parts of yourself that makes you who you are, then you start to notice, I am, I can. And I think that's what allowed me to become a psychologist today.
Okay, and my second question is, what motivated you through your toughest times? Life is all about failures. Life is all about struggles and challenges. I think one of the hardest times for me was my doctorate program. When I said that, I felt like I went through it alone. It was the hardest moments of my life, the hardest 4 years. The reason why I say it's hard is because the very first day that I had class in my graduate program, I was supposed to go to class, but my wife comes up to me and she says, "We gotta go." I said, "Yeah, we gotta go, we gotta get going." She says, "No, we gotta go." She was pregnant with our 4th child. Yeah, I know, right? So I emailed my teacher right away, "Hey, I can't come to class. I'm extremely apologetic. I can't come tonight. I gotta go to the ER. My wife and I are having a baby." So while I was in my doctorate program, I was also a full-time dad, raising 4 kids, age 4 and younger. I was still working at the time, was full-time as well, paying for bills, a full-time husband, full-time son, a full-time friend, all of these different parts that are being pulled in all sorts of directions. And that was one of the most challenging times for me. My mom shared with me that, I don't remember the story anymore, or the process of doing this, but she said, "I remember in the course of your studies, one time you had your baby in your back, the langya, you see the elders holding that? The langya with the baby in the back, sleeping all, neck, all crazy." She said that you were standing there with your baby in your back while you were working on your paper. She says that picture, that image is embedded in her. And she shared that with me. And I told Mom, I don't remember that at all. I think I was traumatized, if anything. It was so hard. I don't want to remember the hard times, but those hard times is what built me today. What motivates me to continue to push forward is when I see my kids every morning, every day, they motivate me. My kids are the reason why I also want to become a better version of myself. I see the innocence of my kid. They taught me a lot about patience. They taught me a lot about curiosity. And I want them to continue to hold on to that. If I can't demonstrate the same thing, curiosity, and also wanting to be a better version of myself, then I can't show it to my kids. Not only that, but I want to pave the way for my kids too. I want them to be a better version of me. And at the same time, that's extended to all of you too. I hope that as you're listening to me and watching me and other people who have paved some of these waves in this professional field of psychology or medicine or as a politician anywhere else, that you also envision yourself wanting to do the same. If not, we are hoping that you would do it better. So for me, my motivation comes from them. It comes from all of you in the community and seeing our communities, all AAPI communities and communities overall in general, move forward to the next level and hoping that we continue to advance as we move forward. So that's my motivation.
What's a proverb you think everyone could understand?
There's so many to choose from. When I started Dictum Dos, I didn't think that Dictum Dos would take off the way that it did. I was in my therapy class, and we were learning about how do you conduct therapy. And during the discussion, we had a topic come up about having an interpreter in the room. So now you have a triad. You have the psychologist, you have the patient who doesn't speak English, and then you have an interpreter. And as we're talking, I'm thinking to myself, this is interesting, because if I were the interpreter and I interpreted everything that my mom was saying verbatim to the clinician, that would be a disaster. Because if my mom's over here, she would say something like, oh, 有中葫芦有龙活气路. And I interpreted that directly, what she said to my clinician. Oh, she said you could take a wrong step and take a step back and you're fine. But if you misspeak, it doesn't work. It wouldn't make any sense. Or something that I hear a lot too is, 那也有道道讲呀. You want mushrooms, go walk the plank, is what she said. The clinician was scratching their head like, what the heck? What? Makes no sense. So I thought to myself, there's something here, there's a disconnect here. Myself and the other generations who don't speak Hmong or understand the proverbs, we may not be able to successfully help and to accurately translate what's being conveyed. So I sat in my car and I took out my phone. I had an old phone at the time, but it worked. And I recorded myself talking about a Hmong proverb that I learned from my parents, and I didn't really understand it until I got older. I heard it many, many times as I was a kid, but as I've gotten older, it became much more clearer to me. I started to understand what it meant. And this is the proverb that I want to share with all of you, and I hope that you apply it too, because it's really useful and really important for you to understand what it means. It's that proverb that I just said. 有中葫芦有龙活气路. 有中葫芦, the first part is, if you take a wrong step, you can take a step back. Nobody gets hurt in that process. You just realize I'm going the wrong direction and now I'm taking a step back. I got to go over here instead. The second part of the proverb, 有龙活气路. If you misspeak, you cannot take those words back. If I look at someone and say, you idiot, right? I cannot just say, oh, you know what? Oh, idiot, please come back. I'm sorry. Give me that idiot word. Let me put it back in my pocket over here. Hey, nothing happened, right? You can't do that. It's not like the physical action of taking a step and you can take the foot back and nothing happens. If you misspeak and you say something to somebody out of anger, maybe out of resentment, whatever that is, once those words leave, you cannot take those words back. You might be able to receive forgiveness from the person, but will that person forget? Absolutely not. I grew up hearing the saying, sticks and stones may break my bones, little kids. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words may never hurt me. Is that true? No, I think that's a defense mechanism. Words do hurt. Words can sometimes cut you like a knife, a dagger in the heart. So this proverb, I like it because it teaches me to be cognizant of the words that I use. That I'm not just out here saying things belligerently, hurting people in the act of talking to people. But I use words intentionally to empower, words to help our community, to help one another. Because I know that once I say something and it's received, I cannot take those words back. And if all of us are careful about that, and we're careful about what we say to one another, and we're respectful about what we say, then we can build that sense of safety within the community. Then we feel more safe to be vulnerable with one another. Then we can have that deep connection with one another. So that's one proverb that I really, really like.
Okay, so on the topic of vulnerability, this is a question generally about minorities. And so in recent media, there have been like films, shows, and stuff like that portraying minorities discussing about mental health. And so do you think within the next couple of years, minority groups would come to understand the importance of mental health? Say like for the Hmong community, for example?
Yeah, good question. I think so. I think that right now there's a lot of hesitancy in talking about this topic. It's a very taboo topic, if anything, in some communities. I know the Hmong community, it was taboo for a very long time. But I think we're starting to see the importance of why mental health should be talked about and not fly under the radar. I say this because I think one of the things that I can speak to, as I'm noticing, is within the community, there's been a rise in suicide. There's been a rise in a lot of young individuals taking their own lives. And when you see those kind of numbers and you see that these are very young kids, 10-year-olds, 16-year-olds, now you have adults taking their lives, you can't help but start asking the question, what is happening here? What's happening? What's leading these people to start taking their own lives? Why did they get to this space? What contributed to that would lead a person to a space where they feel that they're worthless, that they mean nothing in this world, that taking their own life is the only answer? And I think it's not just me, but I think a lot of people who are in this field, people are outside this field, who love our people, who love the community. We don't want to see those numbers continue to increase. And so I know that there's a lot of people out there too who are talking about it, not just in the Asian communities, but outside of the Asian community as well. I know my peers, when I talked about earlier, I work in a very diverse group of people. My peers who are Hispanic, my black peers, colleagues, my white colleagues, everyone, we're talking about it because it's important. When you hear of a 10-year-old who just took their own lives all of a sudden, that's very hard to hear. It's very disheartening. We can't help but to ask the question, what is happening? So we're having the conversation, we're talking about it. We're talking about it and we're not apologizing for talking about it because it is important. Everyone matters. Everyone deserves to be able to live and thrive, to reach your fullest potential. And if there are barriers in the way that's doing that, we got to find ways to untangle some of those barriers, to remove those barriers. And it begins with us talking about it. And if the media is not doing a good job of doing that, guess what? We have social media now that moves pretty quick. So my channel, Dictum Dos, I talk about it a lot. I've seen other channels as well that talk about it. The more we talk about it, the more we highlight it, the more it becomes comfortable to address. And that's what I hope to see. It's not just the minority communities, but all communities talking about it because it is important. Your lives are important, everyone's lives are important. Thank you for asking.
On that topic, what was the time where you think everything is going really well, and then you kind of get hit with the reality check, and you're like, oh my God, what is going on?
Mm-hmm. Does anybody know somebody or have a family member or somebody who took their own lives? I have a family member that took their own life, and that was hard for me. This question hits me hard because I thought to myself at that time that I would never think of that. Why would I think of doing that? When I talked about the hard times, the fear in all those different parts about my experience and my struggle, one of the things that hit me the hardest was in the midst of my program. And I'm passionate about talking about suicide and preventing suicide because I myself, I considered it. It got so hard and so challenging at one point that I thought to myself, it would be easier if everything just ended. It would be easier if I just ended it and then now everything would be done. Because it was so hard, it was challenging. I felt helpless, hopeless. All the different parts of myself being pulled out of me, feeling empty inside. That was probably the hardest time in my life. But I overcame that. I think I refound myself. I reclaimed who I was because of the people around me. I think God gave me a new chance at life to reclaim my purpose again and understand why I'm here. And that allowed me to see myself in this different light, to remind myself that I serve a purpose, I serve a goal. I did get lost as a result of all these different parts pulling me. But when I found myself again, through the people that love me, the people that surrounded me, my family, my friends, my spouse, my God, I was quickly reminded that I have a purpose. And as hard as it is, through the storm, I will come out a new person. And it's exactly what I did. And these are challenging moments. I'm sure that as I'm talking about it, it might move you in some ways because some of you may be going through challenging times as well. Some of us suffer in silence and nobody knows about it. But trust me, it does get better with time. Surround yourself with the people who can empower you, the people that love you and support you. The clouds will suddenly move. The sun will shine bright again. So that was probably the most challenging time for me is during the course of my studies and overcoming some of those barriers and finding the right support system to help me overcome some of the adversary moments and the challenges of life. But believe in yourself, you can do it.
Because you pursued in psychology, what do you truly desire? And do you desire peace in the world?
Gosh, you hit it right on the nail. Yes, I do desire peace. My kids always ask me, like, Dad, if you could have one thing in this world, what would you want? And it became a canned answer. I always answer my kids, I wish for world peace. I wish there was peace. But I think what brought me here, I think that's more important than why did I choose to become a doctor. And I think those world peace and becoming a doctor, they go hand in hand. I'm sure a lot of you either had this experience before or you will have this experience in the next few years, where you might be on stage and someone's going to give you the mic and say, what do you want to be when you grow up, right? And then kids might always respond, I want to be a doctor. I want to be a lawyer. I want to be a politician. I want to be an engineer. I want to be a nurse. I want to be a firefighter. All these different answers of different occupations. And while that may be great, to me, when I hear that, it's inspiring. I also hear that that's a destination. And if that's a destination, when you reach it, now what? For example, if you want to be a doctor, the day you receive your diploma and you are a doctor, now what? You've reached your destination. A better question to ask is a question that I heard Barack Obama said, and he said, instead of asking that question, how about we ask the question to our young kids, what is it that you hope to contribute to society, to improve the world? That's a much better question. And if the answer is, I want to cure cancer, then that is your purpose, that is your goal, that is your passion. And along the way, as you are working towards curing cancer, guess what's going to happen? You might end up being a scientist. You might end up being a doctor. And those occupations, they're merely a byproduct of you pursuing this goal of curing cancer. For me, world peace is that. I hope to achieve that. Of course, it's not that easy. But the doctorate degree and become a psychologist is a byproduct of that. It's not my destination. If anything, it's a stepping stone to my purpose and my goal, is to achieving this peace that we're looking at here. Helping people understand one another, wanting people to be authentic in themselves. And along the way, as I'm doing this, the doctorate degree just happened to also be a byproduct of that. So I throw that back at you too. What is it that you hope to contribute to society? What is it that you hope to put out there to improve the world? And if you end up becoming a doctor, a police officer, a politician, a nurse, whatever that is, it'd be that byproduct that we're talking about. But your passion, your goal is still there. So that every day when you wake up, you're not snoozing the clock. You wake up, you feel ready to pursue that passion of yours, to pursue that purpose, that goal that you set for yourself. Thank you for asking the question.
Do you know how to express your emotions better? Because whenever I try to, I feel nervous and scared.
Mm-hmm. Great question. To express our emotion, I think that's something that's innate in us. I don't think we need any kind of teaching to be able to do that. You think about a newborn baby, right? Did anyone teach a baby how to cry? No. I have 4 kids. I've witnessed this. The moment the kid comes out, guess what? Cry right away. If anything, the doctors, that's what they're listening for is, we want to hear this baby cry. The moment this baby comes out. No one taught this baby how to cry. Baby comes out, the baby's not crying, something is wrong. We need attention right away. But the baby comes out, baby's crying, whew, the doctors are relieved. As parents, we are relieved to hear that cry. So our emotions, they're innate. You don't need any teaching. If I'm upset, I might be kicking stuff. If I'm super upset, throwing stuff. If I'm sad, I'm gonna feel it. If I'm excited and I'm happy that I caught a Charizard CP4000, I'm gonna shout, I got a Charizard over here. And then a flood of kids will come next to me, right? But these emotions that we experience, that we have, they're innate. They're genuine. They come up naturally. It's our natural instincts. It helps us to survive. How we express it, along the way, we tend to close up those expressions, those emotions. Like I said earlier about being stoic, maybe we're taught to be more stoic in some ways. Or maybe the message we get is, as a boy, I work with a lot of boys and men, boys shouldn't cry. If you cry, you're weak. So all these different messages, now suddenly we start thinking, oh, I shouldn't cry. And I'm standing here at a birthday party and I'm excited, I'm happy, I want to cry, I feel my neck start to swell, I feel my tears starting to come, I'm like, nope, go back in. My stomach's starting to turn and I'm suppressing it. But to express our emotions is we have to unlearn some of these things that created that barrier in the first place. For example, the crying part. Naturally, as a baby, we come out, we all cry. But over time, how come all of a sudden we stop crying? Either we learn how to do it, or either we lost the emotions because of maybe head trauma or something. We lost the sensory motors. But to fully express it, we also have to understand first, what emotion is it that we're experiencing? Sometimes we confuse them because we suppress them so much. Maybe I'm feeling sad, or maybe I'm feeling angry. I'm not sure. Sometimes we express a lot of anger, and when I work with people, you know what I find out? That anger is a second layer to what they're really experiencing. What they're really experiencing is not anger, it's sadness. That sadness they weren't sure how to experience that or how to process that, and it became anger. And maybe anger is much more accepted in society in some ways, or culturally. So I think it's important for us to understand what's happening first. And we have to be able to be honest with ourselves. If I'm feeling anxious, I gotta be honest with myself. Yeah, I'm feeling anxious. Here's a hard one that I recently had a conversation with a lot of folks is, if you're feeling jealous, admit it that, yeah, I do feel jealous. I think that's the hardest one to do. All these different emotions that we experience, the first step is we have to be honest with ourselves. When we're honest with ourselves and we allow ourselves to experience it, then what we put out, we know. Then what we put out, we realize it's quite natural, it's okay. So we have to first be able to identify it. That's not in your stomach, no, it's not gastritis, it's anxiety. The anger that you're putting out there, is it really anger? No, maybe it's not. Maybe it's because my mom died and I was sad and no one helped me process my grief. And eventually, that feeling like no one helped me process my grief turned into anger, but deep down inside it was sadness at first. So we gotta be honest with ourselves to understand what's really happening emotionally and allow that to be experienced. And then we can express it. And sometimes, again, it doesn't need teaching. We don't need to be aware of it. If you're at a graduation ceremony and it's making you feel like you want to cry because you're so excited, allow it to exist. It's what makes us human. We're not robots. Thank you for asking.
Hi. Do you have any tips on how to speak to a large audience?
Great question. I asked that question a lot when I was growing up, and honestly, I never imagined myself being on stage like this and talking to a group of people like this. And the answer I usually get from people is, just imagine everyone is naked in the audience, right? I always get them like, nah, I don't think so. I don't think I would do that. Because that takes the vulnerability away from me. But I think to me, as I'm learning, as I'm talking more, what's really helped me talk in front of an audience is I'm here with a purpose. I'm here because I have something to say. I'm speaking unapologetically because what I say is what I envision, what I see, what I hope to see. So before I even come on stage here, I remind myself that today when I talk, I speak with purpose. What I say here is something valuable that's contributing to something greater. When I tell myself that, then it empowers me. Sometimes when we talk to people, we want everyone to nod their heads and agree, right? But for me, what I'm realizing is if I can move one person in this room, just one person, if I can help this person change for the greater good in some ways, then I'm going on that stage and I'm talking. I don't care what I have to do, if I can just move one person, that's all that matters. So I'm not trying to get all of you to nod your head. If I just get one nod, then I've succeeded. So many ways to do it, but for me, that's what's worked for me.
Do you have somebody that inspires you or someone that you're extremely grateful for?
Oh, yes. I'm going to say my mom. And, my mom always says something, and excuse me. When I have conversations with my mom, there's something that she always says, and I'm like, if only I can find a way to stop that. My mom would always say, she and I would have a conversation. We'll talk about some things that are very deep, something personal, something that, we can help to improve. My mom would always say to me, in English, that is, if I were a boy, I would do it. And I think each time I hear that, I keep thinking to myself, how come? How come that barrier's there, Mom? Why does that barrier have to be there that stops you from reaching your fullest potential, that stops you from showcasing who you are as a person, your talents, your gifts, and your abilities? And I hear that all the time. And even though that's there, I still see my mom. My mom is a very loud person. If you see my videos, my mom, she speaks candidly, but she speaks with purpose, with hopes to change the world and the people around us. So when I think about my mom, I'm inspired by her. Even though she realizes there are barriers in place, she would shatter those glass to speak up anyways. But then again, there's still that piece that halts her from pursuing what it is that she believes in. If I were a boy, I could do it. And so that inspires me and motivates me to find ways to untangle some of those barriers so I don't have to hear those words. So they're not just boys or girls or whoever it is that are wanting to pursue your dreams and your goals, that these barriers don't have to exist. That you yourself, if you show up authentically, you have the gifts, the abilities, and the talents, all these different skills, you don't have to feel like you need to put them away, but that you can put them to use. Because you deserve that space. That space is yours. You have the skill sets, the competency, that space is yours. There shouldn't be any barriers in the way. And I will hope as we end this here that all of you empower yourselves with you, just being you. Understanding your emotions, understanding who you are, understanding your skill sets, your abilities, not being shy about it, but using it. And I'll end with this. I heard one person said, and he said that you need to be like a warrior. Bruce Lee also said this too. A warrior is an average person with laser-like focus. You need to better yourself and continue to be that warrior. You need to be a beast, is the word I hear a lot. Be the best that you are, but that doesn't mean you go around and acting like a beast. You empower yourself with all the skills and abilities. The most important thing is being able to control that beast and use it at the right time. So harness your power, find that beast. I know it's in you, all of you. Continue to be yourself, continue to be you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Calvin Yang. Thank you, audience, for your questions. Let's all stand up and give them a big round of applause.
So I know we're ending the end of our event, but we do have one more performance for you guys. And this last performance will be performed by NDZ Tsai Deja. So help me welcome the group to the stage. Thank you again for NDZ, Tai Deja, and Hmong artist Lily Ving for the inspiring performances. And a thank you to our speaker, Dr. Kelvin Yang, for sharing his time and insights today.
Most importantly, thank you to everyone who joined us here at MATC in person and everyone on the stream for sharing in this Invest in Equity event. On behalf of the MATC Asian Affinity Group, we hope you all continue to celebrate the Asian, Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander communities and cultures throughout the year. Our celebration continues out in the hallway with networking and social time. Thanks so much again for joining us. Thank you.